Deep in the mountains near the Laotian border, American troops at Kham Duc were running out of time. Enemy forces had tightened around the tiny camp. Mortar fire was increasing, and aircraft were coming under threat. And within hours, commanders would make a decision almost unheard of during the Vietnam War. But to even get to that point, the isolated soldiers there would have to survive the morning. In the darkness surrounding Kham Duc, reports were already beginning to raise concern. The isolated Special Forces camp, positioned deep in the mountains near the Laotian border, had spent the night under increasing pressure. Enemy movement had been reported outside portions of the perimeter, and scattered fighting had continued through the early morning hours. Several observation posts had been placed beyond the main camp to provide early warning. Their job was simple: watch the surrounding terrain, report enemy activity, and give Kham Duc time to react if an attack developed. But shortly after 3:30 a.m., communication with one of those positions was lost. At first, there was uncertainty. Radios could fail in the mountains surrounding Kham Duc, and darkness often complicated communication. Yet the timing was difficult to ignore. Enemy activity around the camp had been increasing, and the loss of contact suggested something more serious might already be unfolding beyond the wire. For the moment, Kham Duc remained operational. Aircraft could still land. Defensive positions remained intact. Most still believed the camp could be held. By dawn, that confidence would begin to change. By sunrise, attention at Kham Duc was increasingly turning toward the camp's airstrip. Isolated in the mountains and surrounded by difficult terrain, the camp relied heavily on aircraft for supplies, reinforcements, and, if necessary, evacuation. As pressure around the perimeter continued to grow, commanders understood that maintaining control of the runway was becoming more important by the hour. Enemy forces had already demonstrated an ability to threaten positions outside the camp, and concern was growing that the airfield itself could soon come under greater danger. For the moment, aircraft were still arriving. Defensive positions remained intact, and communication throughout the camp continued. Yet the situation was becoming harder to ignore. If Kham Duc could no longer safely operate its runway, the camp risked becoming isolated with few options left. Within the next hour, conversations about evacuation would begin to grow more serious. By mid-morning, concerns over the situation at Kham Duc had begun turning into action. With enemy pressure continuing to build around the camp, the evacuation order was given, and the airstrip quickly became the center of nearly everything happening inside the perimeter. Aircraft were arriving to move personnel and supplies out of the isolated camp. Wounded men, civilians, and military personnel all competed for limited space, while commanders worked to keep operations organized under increasingly difficult conditions. The situation surrounding Kham Duc continued to deteriorate. And with every passing hour, the runway was becoming more exposed. Before long, the evacuation would begin growing much more dangerous. As the morning wore on, the evacuation was becoming increasingly difficult. Enemy attention was now focused almost entirely on the airstrip, where aircraft remained the only realistic way out. Pilots were facing mounting risk, and troops on the ground worked to move personnel as quickly as possible through an environment that was becoming harder to control. What had begun as an organized evacuation was now starting to fall apart. And for many men, a new question was beginning to emerge. Would there be enough time to get everyone out? By late morning, the operation turned deadly. A C-130 transport aircraft carrying evacuees departed under difficult conditions, only to come under enemy fire shortly after takeoff. The aircraft was shot down, killing everyone aboard. News of the loss spread quickly through the camp. For those still waiting near the runway, the meaning was impossible to ignore. leaving the camp no longer guaranteed survival. By midday, the evacuation was pure chaos. The loss of an aircraft had changed the atmosphere, and uncertainty now spread across the airstrip as personnel continued waiting for transport. The final aircraft departed the isolated camp, carrying out the last remaining American personnel. Behind them, Kham Duc was left largely empty. Defensive positions were abandoned, equipment remained scattered throughout parts of the camp, and the airstrip that had dominated the day's struggle now sat behind American lines for the last time. Within hours, U.S. aircraft would begin striking portions of the abandoned camp to deny supplies and equipment to enemy forces moving into the area. In less than a single day, Kham Duc had gone from a functioning special forces camp to a position no longer considered defensible. For those who escaped, the final hours had served as a reminder of how quickly a battlefield in Vietnam could change. The battle for Kham Duc came at a heavy cost. In the fighting surrounding the camp, the evacuation, and the collapse of nearby outposts, American forces suffered 42 killed, with another 71 wounded. At one point, 31 personnel were also listed as missing, as confusion during the withdrawal complicated efforts to account for everyone. But those men were mostly accounted for later.
Dust devils dancing on the cracked asphalt. Sky's the color of a faded photograph. This old engine's humming, carrying on my thoughts, trying to outrun the echoes of a laugh. Oh, the river keeps on rolling, don't care where I've been. The cypress trees are watching, they've seen it all beginning in.
Hello. We here at Battle Docs would like to extend our thanks to the people who watch our videos. I think it's important that we remember these men and women who sacrificed so much for our country. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here. We'll see you on the next video.